Machiavelli didn't write The Prince to entertain. He wrote it to warn you, not with soft words or noble ideals, but with ruthless instructions on how to see the world as it is, not as you wish it were. And at the heart of that warning is this: you are either shaping power or you're being shaped by it. You are either ruling your reality or someone else is ruling you. If you don't know how power operates beneath appearances, if you don't understand how people hide their intentions behind smiles, favors, and virtues, then your kindness becomes currency for others, and your morality becomes the leash they control you with. Machiavelli saw it happen to kings, to leaders, to citizens who thought their honesty would protect them. It didn't. It destroyed them. So he gave us The Prince, a survival manual for the ambitious. And today we distill it into 9 laws, not philosophies, not theories. Laws that, if broken, will cost you your power, your clarity, and eventually, your freedom. Machiavelli wrote, "It is not necessary for a prince to have all the good qualities. It is necessary to appear to have them." People are comforted by kindness, by mercy, by generosity. But Machiavelli saw what happens when rulers actually live by these traits. They're used, betrayed, overthrown. So he gave this brutal advice: be whatever you must be, ruthless, cruel, calculating, but always wear the mask of virtue. If people believe you are generous, they will forgive your greed. If people believe you are kind, they will not expect the knife. If people believe you are merciful, they will never prepare for your retaliation. To think like Machiavelli is to understand reputation is your armor, reality is your weapon. Don't waste time trying to be good for everyone. Instead, appear good to those who are watching and do what must be done behind the curtain. This is where most people flinch. Machiavelli wrote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." Why? Because love is based on expectation, and expectation can turn to hate the moment you disappoint. But fear roots itself deeper. The one who fears you watches their words. The one who fears you doesn't plot as freely. The one who fears you believes that betrayal will cost them more than silence. To think like Machiavelli is not to become a tyrant. It is to understand that fear is a more stable foundation than affection. Love fluctuates. Fear endures. But here's the nuance. Be feared, but not hated. A prince should cause fear in such a way that if he does not win love, he avoids hatred. You instill fear through consequences, not chaos, not humiliation, not random violence. Controlled, measured, predictable. People should think I would never dare betray him, but I still respect him. In The Prince, Machiavelli talks about how even the most loyal soldiers can turn into enemies when ambition whispers louder than loyalty. He warned that princes who rise too fast often fall just as quickly because they trust the hands that lifted them more than the hands that are sharpening blades behind their backs. He who builds his power on the people must not trust too much in their loyalty. So what does this mean in real life? That praise today doesn't mean protection tomorrow. That someone fighting for you might only be doing so because it benefits them. That the person smiling at your success might secretly be counting the days until your fall. To think like Machiavelli is to trust with limits. You don't become paranoid. You become observant. You don't assume betrayal. You prepare for it quietly, strategically. Because when betrayal comes, you won't need to react. You'll already be in position. This is where Machiavelli is most hated and most honest. He says that a prince who always acts morally will be destroyed by those who don't. A man who wishes to act entirely up to his professions of virtue soon meets with what destroys him among so much that is evil. Think about that. If your enemies are willing to lie, cheat, steal, and you refuse to do any of that, you've already lost. To think like Machiavelli is not to abandon all morality. It's to know when it must be suspended. The end justifies the means. If the survival of your mission, your family, your purpose depends on actions others would call wrong, you take them, because morality without power is decoration, and Machiavelli never wore ornaments. We've just entered the mind of someone who understood how to win wars without drawing swords, who wrote the book not on leadership, but on cold survival. Every time you choose peace over power, generosity over strategy, or vulnerability over calculation, someone is watching. And Machiavelli's mind was built to catch that. He didn't just study leaders, he studied how they fell. Their downfalls weren't always dramatic. Often they came from one misplaced virtue, one overused strength, one assumption that people would remain grateful. These are the laws kings ignored when they thought applause would make them untouchable. This is the paradox most leaders never understand. Machiavelli wrote, "A prince who is generous will soon consume all his resources and be forced to burden his people, which causes hatred." It sounds insane. Be generous and people will turn against you? Yes. Here's why. If you're generous once, it becomes expected. When you stop, even briefly, you're seen as stingy. And worse, generosity can attract opportunists, not loyalty. Machiavelli understood this psychological trap. People remember what you no longer give more than what you've already given. So what does he advise? It is better to have the reputation of being stingy, which produces hatred less than the hatred that comes from needing to tax people to maintain generosity. Let that sink in. It's not that you never give. It's that you never give in a way that traps you. You give to control, not to be admired. To buy time, not love. To create leverage, not dependency. Every leader wants to be praised. Every ruler wants to be adored. But Machiavelli saw flattery not as admiration, but as a diagnosis of your blind spot. There is no other way of guarding oneself against flattery than by letting men understand that you are not offended by the truth. He wasn't warning against the flatterers. He was warning against you, the one who wants to believe them. If someone always agrees with you, they want something. If they laugh too hard at your jokes, they're protecting their access. If they overpraise your intelligence, they're probably feeding their own strategy. To think like Machiavelli is to distrust perfect agreement, to invite contradiction, to reward honesty even when it stings. Because a leader who cannot stomach truth will drown in illusion. And those illusions are always sold to you by flatterers with a smile and a knife. Indecision is the slowest form of death in power, but rashness is just as fatal. Machiavelli's solution: delay internally, act externally. A prince must show himself a lover of decisiveness, even if within he hesitates. People follow confidence, not truth, not precision, certainty. So what does that mean? You can buy time behind the scenes, but to the world appear resolute. You can test options in silence, but speak as if your course is set. You can have doubts privately, but in public, your eyes must not flinch. This is why Machiavelli admired Cesare Borgia. He planned in silence, struck with force, and never apologized. Because once the perception of your doubt is out, others will step in to guide you, and their guidance will always serve them, not you. Machiavelli said, "The best fortress is to be found in the love of the people, for even if you have a fortress, you are still hated and alone." But earlier he said fear is safer than love. Is this a contradiction? No, it's a blueprint. Here's what it means. Fear is your defense mechanism. It keeps enemies at bay. Love, or more accurately, respect, is your power base. It keeps followers from turning. You can't survive on love alone, but you must not be hated by the masses. Machiavelli watched rulers retreat into fortresses, thinking they were safe, then starved, poisoned, cut off from power. Because even the strongest fortress crumbles when those outside stop caring whether you live or die. So the real stronghold is in minds. Shape your reputation. Be respected for strength, admired for composure. Let your image be feared by the elite, but remembered with honor by the many. That's how you survive revolutions. Machiavelli divided life into two forces, virtù and fortuna. Virtù is your strength, your planning, courage, adaptability. Fortuna is luck, chance, randomness, chaos. He believed that people who rely on fortune are fragile, but those who command with virtù shape their own outcome. It is better to be impetuous than cautious, for fortune is a woman, and it is necessary, if one wants to master her, to beat and strike her down. Brutal metaphor, but the meaning is clear. You don't wait for the world to give you power. You seize it, you shape it, you dare to impose your vision upon uncertainty. And when you fail, you don't blame fate. You adjust, you evolve, you come back sharper. Machiavelli didn't worship destiny. He made himself inevitable. And now, so can you. By now, you see that Machiavelli didn't want you to live in fear. He wanted you to be untouchable, but there's a catch. Once you begin seeing the world this way, you start seeing through people. You see the lies behind their compliments, the power plays behind their generosity, the weakness behind their smiles. And for many, that awareness becomes a curse. They either become paranoid, isolated in suspicion, or arrogant, abusing power until it turns on them. Machiavelli predicted both. Machiavelli said, "A prince who relies entirely on fortune will fall as fortune changes." But what does that look like in real life? It's the person who keeps using the same tricks, even when they stop working, who tries to apply past victories to new challenges without recalibration, and who becomes addicted to their own methods instead of responding to the new terrain. Machiavelli saw rulers fall not because they were weak, but because they refused to change. They were loyal to how they had won and blind to how the game had changed. To think like Machiavelli is to kill your past strategies when they no longer serve the present. Your loyalty is not to tradition, not to method, not even to ideology. Your loyalty is to what works. Everything else is disposable. This is subtle and deadly powerful. Machiavellian thinkers don't just observe situations. They observe themselves within situations. While others argue, they ask, who's benefiting from this fight? While others celebrate, they wonder, whose ego is growing right now and whose guard is dropping? While others feel offended, they calculate, what does this person gain by making me react? This ability to be inside and above the moment at the same time is what gives Machiavellians control. You're not just experiencing, you're studying, tracking, positioning. It's not detachment, it's strategic awareness. Power belongs to those who can see the whole board, while everyone else is staring at their own square. If people see you as a threat, they prepare defenses. If they see you as competition, they plot your downfall. If they see you as above them, they resent you. So don't let them see it. Machiavelli never said to be invisible. He said to be inoffensive, to blend, to match, to reflect what others want to see. Let them underestimate you. Let them assume you're average. Let them think they know your limits. Because when the moment comes, your strike will be untelegraphed. To think like Machiavelli is to make sure that by the time they realize you're dangerous, you've already won. Every word you say is a data leak. People don't just listen to what you say. They analyze how you say it, why you said it, and most importantly, what it says about what you want. To the Machiavellian mind, most people talk too much. They fill silences out of insecurity. They over-explain to seem transparent. They rant to feel powerful. But every excess word arms your opponent. A wise prince never reveals his intentions. You don't need to lie. You just don't need to reveal. Let your presence be calm. Let your statements be clean. Let your silences be unnerving. And let the people around you wonder what you're planning while they expose themselves trying to read you. Machiavellian thinkers don't build relationships based on emotions. They build them based on utility. That doesn't mean you lack warmth. It means your warmth is measured, controlled, strategic. You categorize people into three types. Levers, people who amplify your power. Lenses, people who help you see what you can't. And liabilities, people who drain your focus, clarity, or control. Once you know who's who, you adjust. Levers are respected but kept at distance. Lenses are treasured but not worshipped. Liabilities are cut off fast and without guilt. Because Machiavelli understood, every person around you is either sharpening your blade or dulling it. To many, Machiavelli seems cold, heartless, cruel, but that's only because they confuse emotional detachment with emotional mastery. Machiavelli never said to kill your feelings. He said to control what your feelings do to your behavior. You can feel insulted and still not react. You can feel hurt and still play the long game. You can feel joy and still not lose discipline. A prince must learn to act against mercy, against faith, against humanity, against frankness, and against religion when it is necessary. Notice the last part. When it is necessary. Not always, not instinctively, not to become a monster, but when the situation demands it. To think like Machiavelli is to feel everything, but choose when and how the world ever sees those feelings. That's not apathy, it's emotional sovereignty. Once you've absorbed Machiavelli's laws, once you've trained yourself to think beyond appearances, to speak less, move quieter, and act with cold intent, there's only one question left. How do you keep this power without becoming its prisoner? Because here's what most people don't realize. The Machiavellian mind is not a weapon you turn outward. It's a system you must also turn inward. You must test yourself just as harshly as you test others. You must analyze your motives, your actions, your flaws with the same cold eye you use on the world. Because the final law Machiavelli never stated directly, but lived through every word, is this: if you can't control yourself, nothing else you control will last. You want power? Start with your reactions. When you're insulted, do you lash out? When you're praised, do you get lazy? When you're tested, do you beg for validation or retaliate blindly? The Prince Machiavelli envisioned was not immune to pressure. He was trained by it. He must learn how not to be good and use this knowledge when necessary. You don't react out of habit. You respond by choice. You don't let emotions dictate your presence. You let strategy sculpt it. A prince doesn't lose control. He uses it as bait, then snaps it back the moment the opponent overcommits. The more people know about how you think, the more predictable you become. The more predictable you become, the easier you are to trap. Machiavelli knew this. That's why he warned against open-hearted rulers. They talk too much. They explain their dreams. They justify their behavior. And in doing so, they give the people around them a map of how to manipulate them. So, how do you avoid that? You become what Machiavelli would call intellectually opaque. You don't reveal motives, only motions. You let people guess your next move while you're already 2 moves ahead. You make it hard for others to even describe you clearly. Be unreadable, be untraceable. Be the kind of mind that forces people to fill in blanks and then act on their own delusions. That's when you're not just unpredictable, you're invisible. Here's the danger of reading Machiavelli without depth. People think power means dominance, loudness, control over others. But true Machiavellianism isn't about acting powerful. It's about never needing to act. It's not about raising your voice. It's about creating such presence that silence does more damage than yelling. It's not about punishing constantly. It's about being so strategic with punishment that the fear of it does the work for you. Real power moves through restraint. It cloaks itself in simplicity. It speaks last, watches first, and disappears before the blood dries. So when you find yourself needing to prove anything, stop. The prince doesn't prove. He orchestrates. He moves behind the curtain. He lets the illusion carry weight, while the truth remains in his control. Here's the final danger. Once you learn these principles, you might start using them on everyone. Every situation becomes a game. Every relationship becomes a calculation. Every room becomes a battlefield. And slowly, your mind becomes a prison of suspicion. Machiavelli never said to treat everyone like a threat. He said to know who is and act accordingly. Use tests sparingly. Use fear strategically. Use deception only when clarity would cost you everything. The Machiavellian mind is not a sword that swings constantly. It is a needle, precise, silent, surgical. Only weak rulers use power indiscriminately. Strong ones, they choose exactly when to use it and let everyone else wonder why. In the end, Machiavelli wasn't teaching you to dominate others for fun. He was showing you how to never be dominated again. He didn't trust blind virtue. He didn't trust sweet words. He didn't even trust himself fully. Because power isn't about becoming a villain. It's about becoming unbreakable. In a world where breakage is the norm, to think like Machiavelli is to walk into any room and know who's performing, who's pretending, who's observing, and who's watching you as closely as you're watching them. It's not paranoia, it's presence. And once you install it, you never move the same again. No more unnecessary honesty, no more misplaced loyalty, no more flinching when kindness is exploited. Just a sharp mind, a calm exterior, and a game no one else even realizes you're playing until you've already won. That's how you think like Machiavelli. Not to imitate a prince, but to become the quiet force that controls the room without ever raising your voice.